So there are some teachings out there that describe a sort of watcher state where you are the witness, witnessing thoughts, witnessing perceptions, witnessing the sensory experiences of sound and sensations and so forth. Someone asked a question about this actually in comments, so I thought to make a video about it. So you've probably noticed if you've been on my channel for quite a while, I don't talk about this. I don't teach this way. And I thought I'd make a video to explain why. So first of all, I have no problem with anything that works. I don't prescribe there being one way to wake up. In fact, it's just not the case. People wake up all kinds of different ways, and ultimately you find what works for you. With that said, certain pointers are really powerful and can really catalyze your ability to turn your attention inward or turn your attention to that place that is beyond thought or primary to thought. And that's the key with a lot of these videos or inquiry techniques, is to find that way in, find what works for you, how that catalyst is accessed. Now, often it's a combination of something you've heard someone describe in their own awakening experience or a teaching, and something you've sort of intuited yourself or figured out yourself. But just understand that I don't prescribe or mean to suggest that any certain technique is wrong or not useful at all, because I don't believe that's the case. I've seen people wake up all kinds of different ways. With that said, my view of this idea of practicing being a watcher or being a witness is that if it helps you, great. But I find that I think people get hung up on it as a sort of mental model, that experiencing what you're thinking of as a watcher state is itself also witnessed in one sense. You don't realize it's actually a thoughtscape or something that you're visualizing. There may be mental images of some kind of watcher or thoughts moving by or clouds moving by or some imaginary scale of distance or of being unmoving and watching things move by. Now, all of those descriptions I just used could be used to describe awakened insight. I could see how those descriptions could be used to describe this just as it is. However, it's very easy to turn those into mental paradigms. So they become thoughts themselves. And when you're in that standing wave of thought identification, you don't realize that the dualistic experience inside consciousness is still very much operating. Also, if you're effectively able to do this with thoughts, which I think is really a good preliminary activity, to disidentify with thoughts and see them as thoughts, to recognize thoughts as such. That's important to be able to do that. Because before that, there's just mind identification. The thoughts feel completely real and solid. You don't even realize they're thoughts. You don't realize you're thinking. You're just completely identified. So this is why often when you sit and meditate for a prolonged period, like in a retreat, you're surprised by how many thoughts there are. And then I usually will say, well, there's not really more thoughts. It's just that you're actually finally not identifying with most of them. And you're probably still identifying with some of them. But that incredible volume of mental activity is sort of hidden when you're completely identified with it. So this first step of developing a watcher state, or just disidentifying from thoughts, is important to recognize a thought as such, a narrative thought, a memory thought, a planning thought, an evaluative thought. Should I be doing this practice or that practice? In real time, when you're sitting. It's important to be able to do that. But don't turn that into a summary thought that says, I'm now a watcher and I've developed a watcher state and I'm the witness And that's my identity as the witness, or I just am the witness. And then sometimes that can turn into I'm awareness. It's critical to see that those are also just thoughts. The belief that I'm a witness is a thought. Witnessing has some built-in assumptions like there is distance, there is space, there is a subject and an object. At some stage of realization, that goes away. It's seen that subject-object experience itself is just really a movement of mind. I wouldn't say it's an overt thought, like a narrative thought, but it is a subtle thought, and it actually really binds your experience in a certain way. It makes things feel a certain way. Like you are an object in a world of objects, navigating that world. So when that collapses, there's no such thing as a watcher state or a witnessing state. You see that that could only be a thought. Now I understand that for many people, this is hard to imagine. And yes, of course it's hard to imagine, because to imagine it, you'd have to construct a thought and believe in that thought. So we're going beyond imagination here. Or maybe we're going primary to imagination. We're going to the most fundamental knowingness possible. What is the raw substance of thinking before it becomes a thought? What is more primary than being a watcher or a witness? What is more primary than the experience of I'm a subject without thinking that, just assuming it, and there's a bunch of objects out there, or even in here, like emotions and thoughts? What's primary to that? Do you see how you can sort of think through that and realize that's really defining a lot of your experience? It's because it's a thought. So what's primary to that? This is how inquiry properly practiced really works, when it's time to dig in so deep that we go beyond any beliefs of watchers, states, awareness, consciousness, witnessing, objects, subjects, I, you, asleep, awake, going beyond all of that. Or maybe not beyond, but going primary to all of that, going to the most fundamental until you go beyond any kind of foundation. That's what this is about. Breaking through all foundations until you find the foundationless. What has no foundation? What needs no foundation? What has never come into being? What has never manifest? What is before the split between real and unreal? The cognitive split. What is before born and unborn? What is your face before your parents were born? What is your original face? Look back and see it right now. What is the sound of one hand? Listen right now. It's not somewhere else. And it's not a thought.